So far, all of our measurements have been of length. Let's now look at some mass measurements. This is a top pan balance. You can see on the front here, the top pan balance can measure a maximum of 5,000 grams, and the resolution of this balance is 1 gram. So the measurements go up in intervals of 1 gram. On the front, I've got an on-off button, and also I've got a tally feature which allows me to set the zero. So if, for example, I wanted to pour some sand into a cup, I could put the cup onto the balance and then set the zero. So that's a really useful feature, but it's also a feature we've got to be careful of, because if we're not careful we could introduce a systematic error. So if I'd had the cup on the balance and set the zero, but then I wanted to measure the mass of a different object, that would not be reading correctly because the zero hasn't been set correctly. We need to make sure that the zero has been set correctly before we can measure the correct mass. So we've looked at taking length measurements and calculating volume. We've looked at measuring mass. We can now introduce the idea of density. When we talk about density, we mean the mass per unit volume of a substance. It's important to note that when we're talking about density, we're usually talking about the density of a material, for example lead or polystyrene foam or hardwood, not of a particular object. Although we could measure the density of a particular object. Let's think about measuring the density of our glue stick. So density is mass divided by volume. Remember that we worked out the volume of our glue stick. And we found a value of 81 centimetres cubed. So for our glue stick, the volume was 81 cubic centimetres. Let's just check that mass again. Here's our balance. We're going to check the zero. The mass of the glue stick is 64 grams. So we can say here then mass is 64 grams. So the density of our glue stick is going to be mass divided by volume. 64 divided by 81, and if we work that out, 64 divided by 81, we'll express that as a decimal. And remember, we need an appropriate number of significant figures. So all of our data in our question was to 2 significant figures. So we're going to express our answer to 2 significant figures. So this value to 2 significant figures would be 0.79. But what's the unit? Well, our mass was measured in grams. Our volume was measured in centimetres cubed, so the density is measured in grams per centimetre cubed.